Hello, Peter47890 here, Cyrus, and welcome to my review of Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. Now this review is going to be different from my usual reviews, since this video is mostly complimentary to my original Devil May Cry 4 review that I did in December, and it's mostly used to highlight the additions that the Special Edition brought to the original Devil May Cry 4 and how they hold up. And that's mostly because the Special Edition still retains the core game of the original Devil May Cry 4. There are major changes, but the core game is still there. The level design is the same, the enemy placement is the same on Devil Hunter, Son of Sparta, Dante Must Die. The bosses are the same, the locations are the same. Nero and Dante still play most the same with a few changes. Well, mostly balance changes rather than playstyle changes. The palace is largely the same, and etc. So you get the picture. So I would recommend people to watch my original Devil May Cry 4 review first, then this review to get the full picture. But if you want the cliff notes on my thoughts on Devil May Cry 4, well, I really liked it. It's my second favorite Devil May Cry game in the franchise, with the deep and stylish combat being incredibly satisfying to experience, with both Nero and Dante being a lot of fun to play as. Nero, albeit, is not as complex of a character compared to Dante and was more of a character to introduce new players to the franchise, but he's still a whole lot of fun to play as, with him having a good variety of moves to combo with in regards to his Red Queen, aka his sword, the Devil Bringer being a satisfying grab mechanic to use in a Devil May Cry game, and the overall charging mechanic with both Nero's sword and gun was awesome to use. Dante, on the other hand, was a whole lot of fun in Devil May Cry 4, with him not only having multiple weapons to use, which each have their own unique moveset to combo with and were great to use, but also the different styles that he could switch from on the fly, which allow him to use certain abilities when he is in a certain style, which overall provided immense combo potential in the game for Dante. Albeit the styles was nerfed compared to 3, but it was still a whole lot of fun experimenting with Dante's combo potential with his weapon switching mechanic as well as his style switching mechanic. Production value wise, I was happy with Devil May Cry 4. Story wise, it was okay for me, though it was kinda unsatisfying just because of how they didn't really explain the origins of Nero, but it had its fun moments. Though I believe my biggest complaint of the game is the level design, with how in the second half of the game basically gets you to play the level in reverse order, which was a bummer, especially since you had to fight the bosses you faced before, except for what is perhaps the best boss in the game. And you can really see how Devil May Cry 4 was rushed. So yeah, those are the cliff notes. Anyway, let's now get to the addition that the Special Edition brings to the original. Firstly, the higher resolution, where the game is now in 1080p resolution, which does make the game look better than the original, and I still personally think that the visuals of Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition still holds up. I mean, it's not the most graphic intensive game out on the PS4, and when you get down to it, there are better looking PS4 games out in the market, but I still think it holds up with most of the game being visually appealing. And not to mention that the game runs great on the PS4, with it running a consistent 60 frames per second. Well, the original did too, so. Though you probably won't be able to tell with the footage I show you, since I am getting footage from the PS4 share function, and the footage gotten from that function doesn't allow for 1080p and 60 frames per second footage. So yeah. The next addition I'm going to talk about is Turbo Mode and Legendary Dark Knight Mode. Now these additions aren't exclusive to the Special Edition since they were on the PC version of Devil May Cry 4 when it came out, but I still think these additions need to be talked about for people who didn't get the PC version of Devil May Cry 4. Now Turbo Mode basically increased the speed of the game by about 20% I think, which makes the game significantly faster, which really does make the game more fun to play through with that extra bit of speed. It's really hard to go back to normal speed once you go for Turbo Mode. Now Turbo Mode is an option that you can turn on in the, well, option menu. As for Legendary Dark Knight Mode, it's a new difficulty mode that was introduced in the PC version of Devil May Cry 4, with the mode providing you tons of enemies. I mean tons of enemies, with the enemy difficulty setting being I think between Devil Hunter and Son of Sparta, though I'm not too sure. And the enemy variety and enemy placement is really different in Legendary Dark Knight mode. they didn't just simply increase the enemy count, they really did change what type of enemy appears in which given area, in comparison to the Son of Sparta and Dante Must Die difficulty mode. Legendary Dark Knight mode is interesting and does require a different mindset from the other difficulties, which can make it pretty interesting to play through. But now let's get to the biggest addition that the special edition brings, which are the 3 new characters you can play through, which are namely Virgil, Lady, and Trish. Now structurally, the missions you can play these characters through the game are similar to how the mission structure for Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition was for Virgil, which is namely you'll be playing through both Nero and Dante stages with these characters. Now for Virgil, he can play through both Nero and Dante stages, with Lady being limited to Nero stages while Trish is limited to Dante stages, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, I was expecting them to have new stages designed for their playstyle. I mean, it would have been great if it turned out that way, but being realistic, I wasn't really expecting that. But playing through Dante and Nero stages does highlight the level design and how much backtracking there really is in the second half of the game, which can get a bit tiring if you are playing through Nero and Dante, then Virgil, and then Lady and Trish, especially going through multiple difficulty modes. And not to mention there are some annoying level designs in the level themselves as well as the backtracking, which can really sour the experience for some. The good thing about the structure though is that all Proud Souls and Red Orbs are shared, which are basically the currency in the game to purchase upgrades, items, and etc. Health upgrades and Devil Trigger upgrades is also shared as well. The additional character also get an opening and ending cinematic when you play through them too. They also get various cutscenes when the game shows the environments when you're playing through the levels, though no story cutscenes during the mission themselves except at the start and the end. Now in terms of the story aspect that you might expect from the opening and closing cinematics for these additional characters, well, for people who thinking that Virgil being playable will answer what is the link between Nero and Virgil, you're going to be disappointed. Virgil's opening and closing cinematic is very inconsequential to Virgil's overlying story in the series. As far as story goes for Virgil in Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, it's basically Virgil entering Fortuna years before the events of Devil May Cry 4, probably before the events of Devil May Cry 3, then leaving Fortuna. That's basically it. But I do give props to the opening cinematic as it does got a kick-ass cinematography that's really entertaining to watch. As for Lady/Trish's opening and closing cinematics, since they share one, those cinematics are basically redone scenes of some of the cutscenes from the original Devil May Cry 4 and even extended were from the girl's perspective, and I generally think these scenes are really nice. The opening cinematic pretty much plays out like the beginning Lady's request cutscene in the original Devil May Cry 4, but it got a great fight scene added with Lady and Trish. The ending cinematic is basically the ending cutscene where Nero is talking to Kiri at the end, but in their perspective, and I do think it's a nice ending cinematic. But I'd probably say these cutscenes doesn't really tell you the story of Devil May Cry 4. You can probably get the gist of the overlying story, but you won't know the progression of the events. You still pretty much have to play through Nero/Dante stages if you want to know the story of Devil May Cry 4. But now let's get to the most important aspect in terms of talking about Virgil, Lady, and Trish, which is namely how they play. Now Virgil play mostly like his Devil May Cry 3 incarnation, with Virgil having 3 different type of weapons he can use, which are Yamato, Force Edge, and Beowulf, that each have their own unique moveset that he can combo freely between, with Virgil still having his summon swords as his ranged weapon, which can be very powerful. But there is some aspect to Virgil's skill set that has been taken from the Devil May Cry reboot Virgil, such as how Grim Trick works. Virgil overall is a very speedy and mobile character to play as, with him being a very in-your-face type of fighter, with him having a very speedy and pretty powerful moveset from across all the weaponry he has that really does complement each other and offer great combo potential, as well as having Grim Trick that allows him to close the distance between him and his foe in an instant, which makes Virgil really exhilarating to play as. And Virgil is possibly the character that can dish out the most damage with the skill set that is given to Virgil. But at the exact same time, I don't think he has as much defensive options as some of the other characters do in the game, especially since he can't Grim Trick down to ground level unless you're in Devil Trigger when you're in the air. As for Virgil's Devil Trigger, which is his super mode basically, which is activated by having enough Devil Trigger runes, which is the bar beneath the health bar, it functions similar to Dante, with him being faster, stronger, as well as extending some of his attack animation. Virgil also put emphasis on precision in his playstyle with his concentration meter, which rewards players to be precise on their attacks and not basically flail around, as well as not getting hit. With the rewards for being precise on their attack style will be that Virgil attacks will be stronger the higher the concentration meter is, and at max concentration, he can basically use a super move that damages all enemies on the screen. Virgil overall is a beast in Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, with his offensive capabilities being really high, having lots of combo potential in his playstyle, and is overall a real blast to play as. Next on the list to talk about is Lady. Now Lady is probably the more unique character to play as her emphasis on gunplay and ranged combat is unusual to the Devil May Cry games, as most of the games are focused on melee combat while the gunplay is there to complement it. Anyway, Lady, like Virgil, has 3 weapons she can use in battle, which are her dual pistols, her shotgun, and her rocket launcher called Kalina Ann, which each have their uses in certain situations, with her pistol dealing fast damage at a good range, with how many charge shots she can deal out, either by charging the shots herself or by using her dual pistol special moves. Her shotgun being ideal for close combat with the large amount of damage you can deal at close range, especially when charged at high levels, as well as being able to stagger enemies pretty easily, and her rocket launcher being able to deal a good amount of damage from long to medium range, as well as having area of effect type of attacks with the special action of the rocket launcher. But it's also able to deal massive amount of damage if you're able to charge the rocket launcher to its maximum. Though, to charge it you have to stand still, unlike the gun and shotgun where you can move around and charge them. You can also deal melee attacks, though these attacks are pretty limited, though you can also toss enemies in the air or slam them down on the ground using Kalina Ann's cord. And Lady's Devil Trigger ability is different from the rest of the characters in the game since, well, Lady is human. And her Devil Trigger ability is basically a super move that she can deal out. With the higher Devil Trigger runes you got, the more damaging the Devil Trigger attack is. All in all, Lady is a really unique character to play as, with her emphasis on gunplay, which really does make her dynamic to play, with her different guns being useful in different situations, as well as you having to keep in mind the positioning, either with your old movement of Lady or taking account of Lady's various gunplay moves that can determine her positioning. But she is also really satisfying to play through with the absurd amount of damage she can deal with her different guns and their different charge mechanics. And now, let's talk about the last additional character, Trish. Now Trish technically doesn't have a weapon switching mechanic like Virgil, Lady, or Dante, but she still does wield multiple weapons, technically. It's just those weapons are dedicated to a single button, and those weapons are Sparta, her demonic lightning power, which basically serves as fisticuffs weapons, and her firearms, which are her handguns, and Pandora, for some reason. Now, of all the characters, I do think that Trish does specialize in crowd control, with a lot of her more powerful moves do having insane reach, as well as being able to stun enemies for a period of time, with her being able to finish enemies with a powerful AoE attack, or stun them long enough to either deal with different enemies, or let you deal a combo on enemies that you stun. And Trish also does have a pretty good moveset to play around with. Okay, the Sparta moveset is kinda limited, but also extremely useful, especially Trish's round trip, which is probably the best round trip in the game. Seriously, her round trip can pretty much go halfway across the map if nothing hits it. It has insane reach as well. But even though her Sparta moveset is kinda limited, but still an extremely useful moveset, her demonic lightning bear Knuckles does have a good amount of moves to play around with the style of her fisticuffs changing if you use round trip or not. But on the downside, I do think her range attack is a bit limited. I mean, her default guns are pretty weak, which can be problematic for some enemies. Granted, she has Vengeance, which is one of the most powerful gun attacks, but that move costs like 3 Devil Trigger runes, which is quite a lot. And Trish's overall firearm capabilities is pretty limited without Devil Trigger, which can make some enemies tricky to fight, like the Boss, Manifesto, and especially the Blitz, which is arguably the toughest enemy in the game. Overall, the additional characters are really fun to play as, but also have their own unique style that differentiate them from each other, as well as being different from Dante and Nero. There are also some other small additions such as unlocking new EX costumes, there being an additional costume for Nero and Dante at the start, and etc. But I have pretty much talked about the major additions that the special edition brings to the table. So with all these additions, is there something that the special edition leaves out from the original? Leadership boards, which I think are really insignificant to this type of game, so nothing really. But now that we're at the end of our video, the question that should be asked is Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition worth it for both newcomers and old fans? Well, I think old fans have already bought the Special Edition, but for new fans, I think yes. Albeit I do think that the Special Edition does make the flaws of the original stand out more, especially the level design. But what the original Devil May Cry 4 gets right, such as the deep and fantastic combat system, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition highlights them as well. So for all intents and purposes, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition is the version you want to get if you haven't tried out Devil May Cry 4 yet, with the additions being substantial enough to draw old Devil May Cry fans back.